Chris, can you go talk to Victor Sulaco and see if we can set up some drills in the front yard? I want to see if I can beat him around the edge. Could the average person off the street in a phone booth with even like a mid-tier,
I know exactly what you're going to ask,
NCAA athlete who's played tackle, like, do you think it's possible I win one of them? 0. Everybody to another edition of the Rock Pile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bill season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And joining us tonight as we kick off our NFL draft preview series, Russ Brown. How the hell have you been, Russ?
I'm good, man. We're doing really well. Just living, grinding, doing the normal thing, covering the Lions, covering the draft, doing some betting pros stuff. So all is good, man. How are you guys?
We're hanging in here. We were just talking off air about like all of our various conundrums, personally, professionally, and it's just this month I think is a slog for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think April. It's funny because I was like, my birthday's April 23rd. It's like this month just sucks to the point where just in general, whether it's taxes, whether it's audit season. It's like I can't even enjoy looking forward to that. It's like I just need to get to May 1st.
Yeah.
That's it. I think we're all just in a race to get to May 1st. I'm sure you feel that as a draft analyst.
Oh, 100%. You're going to be just like on a 4 or 5 day binger with the birthday on the 23rd, the draft on the 24th, 25th, 26th. Like you're just going to live down right where you are right there.
It's going to be a bad day to be a beer. I can tell you that. So how's things over at Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros going?
We're good, man. We've got a top 50 big board. That's all finalized. We're kind of putting the finishing touches on it, so that should drop probably early next week. So that'll give everybody kind of a peel back on who I like and don't like, and maybe scouting notes and things like that. And then trying to hammer out the draft guide. It's always tough because you got the handwritten notes, and then I'm not a copy and paste kind of guy on the thing. I like to read my notes and then rewrite it again and format it with the projections, and then I got to add all the player notes into it and the whole nine. But trying to get 120-ish players on there is always tough because there's only so much time in the day to watch film, and if I continue to watch players, this board will never get done because it's actively player is moving from 60th to 58th, and then I watch a new player and I'm like, wait, that guy's pretty good. So now he's 59th, and the next guy's moving down. It becomes a cluster. So I try to cap out at 7, 8 players a position, and then when there's the more dominant position groups, more defensive ends, more receivers, and things like that, we'll add those players on as we go. But mock drafts have been dropping at Fantasy Pros, and then doing the Lions thing, just a lot of stuff as far as who they're targeting, guys that make a lot of sense. For example, last week I dropped an article. I think Luther Burden at pick 28. I think if he was there, I would be kind of pissed if they passed on him because he makes a lot of sense for their offense and the future of how it holds at the wide receiver position there. So it's really interesting. I think there's so many scenarios, and that's what I love about the draft, is playing through every single scenario in my head. For example, and this is a very long intro, so my apologies.
It's all right.
And this kind of is relevant for Bills fans. They would probably love it because I'm not as high on this player as other people, and I know other people are not as high on him as well, but the NFL is high on him, and that's Georgia linebacker Jalen Walker. I would be very curious if he is a possibility for them at 4. And nobody's talking about it. But I know for the Bills, it'd be I kind of would like that because I think he's limited or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
But it's worth noting. So I'm playing through all these scenarios every single day, and it makes my brain hurt sometimes.
Well, and that's it. And I feel like this is kind of what the NFL draft analysis process becomes. I used to try to get into it back in the infancy of this podcast when I was like, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to pay attention to the draft, and I'm going to find resources on these guys. And I'm going to start trying to go back and watch games. There was no resource for me to go find tape, quote unquote. No. You sat there like an idiot with 50 recorded college games trying to thumb through them like, all right, let me find the game. Let me go see how this guy did because he was going up against marquee competition. And the first thing I learned is that I don't know shit about shit. The second thing I learned is that it almost sometimes the farther you get into these things, the more like you're comparing players against other players within a given class. And one of the things you almost don't have time for is to take a step back and think about, okay, within this class, man, I love this player. I love this player. This guy has a lot of talent compared to his corollaries. But then you take a step back and go, once you draft this kid, he's still got to come in and make an NFL team. That kid has to be able to go then compete against tenured professionals. So it's not just how good are they in a vacuum here against their own level of competition, but also what happens when you put them in with other grown adults who have been doing this for a living. And that's where offensive players are interesting in that way. And offensive linemen specifically, because you have some guys who come out of nowhere and they perform really well. And then you have some guys, and you'll watch those players get passed over by teams, or they get drafted in the middle rounds, or they're, priority UDFAs who end up doing really well for themselves at the NFL level. And then you see other guys who are highly touted, like your, Cody Fords of the world.
Greg Little.
Your Greg Littles of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Who just get taken and couldn't have fallen harder on their faces if they tried. And so with that, I always find this like interesting. And one of the things I saw was Lance Zierlein did a thing the other day where he just did, hey, here's my synopsis of how these classes stack up against each other positionally ahead of the draft. And I found it interesting that offensive tackle was about the middle of the pack, which you kind of expected. I think the tackle class doesn't have, this draft as a whole doesn't have a lot of the star power that I think fans are used to seeing, but there's a lot of solid players wrapped up in there that you can probably do something with. But the interior offensive line class was like way down at the bottom. I think he ranked them like 8th out of the 12 positions. Does that kind of align with how you see this class as a whole?
Offensive tackle, yeah. I mean, in my top 100, I only have 7 offensive tackles. Interior offensive line, I only have 7 interior offensive linemen graded. So I guess it would be similar. But I feel like you get a little bit more value with interior offensive linemen like later in the draft. So it's not like it's one of those like where if you want to tackle, I think you got to take them early because it's the premier position, but it's not necessarily a great tackle class. So like teams like Houston, I know you traded away Laramie Tunzel, but if you're not getting Calvin Banks because you're not getting Will Campbell or Armand Membo, if you're not getting Calvin Banks, you might be reaching a little bit with Josh Simmons. Maybe you're not. I know a lot of people like Josh Simmons, but he's coming off a very serious injury. And then if you're not going that route, like, can Josh Connerly be that guy? I like Aireontae Ersery out of Minnesota. Like, so I think it's a good class, like at the top. But once you get through kind of those top 40 picks, the offensive tackle group just really just drops. And then the interior offensive line class kind of evens it out. So you're going to find some talent. And there's some deeper guys that I didn't grade, per se. There's guys like Charles Grant from William and Mary that a lot of teams like, Anthony Belton from the NC State, Jared Wilson, Miles Frazier. So there's some names, but I just didn't do full evaluations on those guys. I only watched, a game or two. And then you start running out of tape, or I didn't have a feeling like they would end up being like a top 105 player on my board. So I didn't go any further. So I would agree with a lot of what you were saying as far as the question.
Hey, we'll take some William and Mary guys as long as they wrestle.
I do love how they constantly put that graphic up every time we play the Steelers. Did you know that William and Mary and both these coaches used to play each other? And I'm like, now it's become a trope up there with talking about Chris Hogan playing lacrosse and the fact that Ryan Fitzpatrick went to Harvard.
They did it with Matthew Stafford for years here in Detroit about him and Clayton Kershaw being best friends growing up. It was like we'd see it 3 or 4 times every Monday night game or every Sunday night game. That's all they ever talked about. And it's like, dude, I've heard this 5,000 times. I don't care about Clayton Kershaw, and I don't care about my quarterback's personal life because he's a good dude and he's perfectly fine. Like, he's been here for 11 years. He's good. Like, yeah, I completely understand how you feel.
So when I think about the Bills' pre-draft outlook for the offensive line position, I think a lot of it's kind of tempered because when you think about where we are now with our offensive line, like Chris, throughout the 18-year playoff drought that we had, the Bills had one of the most painfully mediocre offensive lines in the entire NFL.
Cyrus Kouandjio.
A lot of times it was worse than mediocre. Like I'm old enough to remember a day where Richie Incognito got thrown off the field in St. Louis because he took back-to-back egregious personal fouls. His coach pulled him out of the lineup back when he was playing for St. Louis. He then, which at the time was Steve Spagnuolo, who's now defensive coordinator extraordinaire, but one of the worst head coaches. I mean, if he would be I think in terms of bad head coaching, he's up there with all the flops that the Jets have had over the years. Some of the worst, he's not quite, Nate Hackett in Denver, but he's close. Yeah. That's how bad it went for Spagnuolo. So of course no one respected him, but Richie Incognito doesn't respect much of anybody. So, he throws his helmet at their coach as they're having a fight. They kick him off the field. He's laughing, walking to the locker room. They cut him the following day. The very next Sunday, he is playing for the Bills and starting in a Bills uniform. That's how shitty our offensive line was. Okay? That's the type of stuff we're talking about. 2008, we have Jason Peters, who's a Pro Bowler. And he's got Langston Walker and Derek Dockery, two of the biggest, and that's pun intended, free agent busts in Bills history on the offensive line with him. And the whole thing sucked. 2013, Cordy Glenn. No slouch at left tackle. Eric Wood, really good in the pivot. He's got two guys named Craig Urbick and Doug Legursky next to him. If I had told you who their names were off air, you would have assumed at least one of those guys was a plumber, not an NFL football player. 2018, Josh Allen's rookie year. We intentionally fielded an offensive line almost completely comprised of street free agents, and they all cost less than a combined $19 million.
Oh, man.
So now when you look at what the Bills have and what they're putting on the field every Sunday, like this is rarefied air by comparison.
Yeah.
We've got bookend high-level tackle play, above average interior offensive line play. We've got a pair of guards that cost well below market value for the play that you're getting out of him, one of them because he's on a rookie contract. And then they've got quality backups like Alec Anderson, he's one of the best 6 offensive linemen in the entire NFL.
Yeah.
He can also start at either guard spot or center for you. And then you've got a guy who's a UDFA player in Ryan Vandermark who started the Chiefs game for you at right tackle, and nobody, like half the fans didn't know it wasn't Spencer Brown. So, like with that, we've drafted and cultivated this awesome stable of offensive linemen that have become the backbone of a really great offense. You get to watch a great offense every Sunday the last 2 years.
Yeah.
You guys have built a dominant offensive line.
Yep. It all starts up front, baby.
Yeah. And so that to have those, like that game, let me pick your brain about this. That game when you watched the Buffalo Bills and the Lions just trading haymakers all day long, what was it like for you when you're watching us going, oh, we got this, we're coming back? Shit, somebody get us. Like, everyone here was screaming about how no one's getting a stop. I go, yeah, but I'm sure there's Lions fans right now yelling the same thing at their TV.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, I was very much in the defensive football mind of like, what are we doing? We're not sending any pressure. We're not blitzing. When we do blitz, it's completely opposite of where Josh Allen is running. And he picked us apart. He could do whatever he wanted that day. And I think probably on 6 out of 7 days of the week, he would be able to do that against our defense with Aaron Glenn calling it. I think Aaron Glenn did well at times, but there were a lot of times where he looked very flawed as a defensive coordinator with what he was calling. And on that particular day, he was. But it was a fun game. I mean, it was fun. And they played the year before on Thanksgiving. It was another fun game, but they had a bad bounce and they missed a field goal. And, things didn't necessarily go the way that they had planned. But I'm with you on the Bills offensive line. They've done a great job building that thing up. And there's so much depth. Like looking at the depth chart, I didn't even realize they signed or got Kendrick Green, and he was a guy out of Illinois that I was a really big fan of. And I thought when he went to Pittsburgh, I was like, holy crap, this guy is a home run pick for them, and he's going to be great for them for the next 6 to 8 years. It obviously didn't work out. He landed in Houston or whatever, but like they've got so much depth and they got so much talent on the top end there that it's a great unit up front.
So with that in mind, and you look at the rest of the roster and the way the Bills pared it down, things that they chose like cornerback, where they just decided not to get into the pool, where they said, listen, we'd rather retain Christian Benford on an extension and spend our money here and not go out into those waters because we see what the price tags are. We're not interested in chasing a veteran talent on the other side of him. Yeah. It almost is tipping their hand at, hey, cornerback is in play in the top 100 picks. Got to be. You look at what they did or did not do. Larry Ogunjobi's a nice piece, but he's not, if you're trying to remake a tackle room, he's not your signing on a 1-year deal that's going to make that happen for the foreseeable future. So there's room there, and this would be a great draft class to do it. And it seems like the way that they approach the offseason kind of tells you that they're leaning more defensively at the top of the draft. Yeah. And so in that way, you start thinking to yourself, okay, I understand we have this amazing offensive line. There is an opportunity, if you're savvy, to maybe get and stay ahead of the sticks a little bit. Because coming down the road, the Bills have a couple things coming up. They've got Connor McGovern's contract that they have to figure out what to do with if they still want him in the pivot. They also have David Edwards, who was a guy that the Rams let walk after they won the Super Bowl. They said, look, we don't need you. Your contract ended. You won the ring here. You played a role for us, but we think we can either upgrade or we just don't want to. We want to put our money somewhere else.
Right.
So he comes here. He's a backup for a year playing that Alec Anderson role. They make him a starter the next year, and it just clicks. And we're only paying him $4 million a year. That's going to change after this season. He's going to go somewhere and command more than what he's been paid.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to be the team that does that?
Yeah.
So you start asking, who do I replace? Do I have to find a direct replacement for Edwards? Or am I trying to find an Alec Anderson replacement? I make Alec Anderson my full-time starting guard while he's still on a very cost-controlled and team-controlled contract. So you start looking at the depth of these classes, and unfortunately, like you hit on earlier, there's not a lot going on at interior offensive line.
Yeah.
And so that almost makes that a hard proposition. Like, do you think it would be hard for the Bills to spend a pick in the 5th round or later and come away with a guy who could contribute, given the talent that's in front of him, and in any way, shape, or form in 2025?
I mean, they could. If they went with USC center Jonah Monheim, if I'm saying that correctly, Monheim. He's an intriguing guy. He's more of a center than he is a guard, but I could see him playing guard. He's a guy that I thought moved really well laterally on film, and from all of the interior offensive linemen I've studied, not saying he's the best one, but he was very gifted in that area. Looks like he's maxed out at 6'4", 302, so maybe he's kind of like a Garrett Bradbury in a sense, like thinner lower half. But again, he moves really well laterally, so I think he's in that 4th or 5th round range. So if you took a swing there and maybe you can rotate him between guard and center, I don't think that would be a bad thing by any means. I would be curious where Miles Frazier from LSU goes. He was a guy, as I kind of mentioned earlier, that he was only a 2-game watcher for me, but he can pull and he finishes. And I just wonder if he's a guy that Sean McDermott and that offensive line, would they fall in love with him because he can win with some leverage and he understands it. But that finishing ability is something that you can't teach. You can't teach a guy to just drill somebody into the ground, and he can do it. So I'm really intrigued by him as a late 3, 4th round type pick. I don't know if they're going to find that guy in the 5th round. They might have to take him a little bit sooner. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the Bills have quite a bit of draft capital and overall a relatively good roster. So they might have to spend those first 2 picks on a defensive player. But then when the interior offensive line group starts rolling and the picks start coming in on that group, maybe they take their guy there in that 3rd or 4th round range.
Well, I do.
Sure, when you say 5th round, it sounds like you're talking about we need a guy like a Wyatt Teller. The 5th round.
Yeah, find. I know. I was going to say, where could we find a guy like a Wyatt Teller? I don't know. Where in the draft would you ever come away with a guy like that? And who would be smart enough to pick a guy there and then cultivate him? I wonder. I wonder.
I was such a big fan of Wyatt Teller too, and when they traded him, I was doing radio in Buffalo when it happened, and I was like, well, I don't know what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like I had a whole thing thought of like what we were going to talk about, and then it just went south real fast.
So one of the things that I think about when I think about that dynamic of guys you can find late, guys who can come in and kind of push the talent that's already on the Bills roster. I had a thought a couple days ago. I reached out to, it's one of the cool things of like getting to talk to people like you guys who are in the draft community and having built relationships with people who, Chris, let's people who are much more popular and listener friendly than we are.
Yes.
Shocker, right? You work a little blue, you drink a little bit too much a couple times. People go, I don't want my kids listening to that. I go, they shouldn't be. That's bad parenting. If you're here, it's bad parenting. That's not on me. That's on you. So one of the things I kept thinking about when I looked at this year's center class, because I am concerned that Connor McGovern may price himself out of where the Bills can match a contract for him. And Brandon Beane seems to be pretty adept at reading the room when it comes to those sorts of things. You know, he's very good at figuring out what his number is for a player. And then he just sticks to his guns and says, look, I'm here. If you can't get here, I wish you know there's no ill will. I'll check in on you. I'll make sure your family's doing all right. But we got to part ways because I have a cap to maintain. And he sticks to that aggressively. And so I look at this and I say, Cedric Van Pran-Granger, player the Bills took in the 5th round last year. I was having a conversation with EJ Snyder from over at Bootleg Football. And I said, EJ, if he were in this year's draft class, where do you think he would rank among center players? And I think a lot of people, remember Van Pran-Granger at the time being labeled a steal for Buffalo, where they got him in the draft last year.
Yep, I was one of those guys.
I was going to say, so I want to get your thoughts now that you've watched a couple of these centers this year, and you think back, like, hey, we've had this guy marinating in our system, being coached by Aaron Kromer for a full season, getting up to speed, but playing behind a Pro Bowl center who's a little long in the tooth and is about to get more expensive. How would you feel if if Van Pran-Granger were in this class? Where do you think he'd rank among center prospects, first of all?
Well, I mean, like the top center in the draft, that's like just a pure center. There really isn't one. The Jonah kid from USC is maybe the pure center. Jared Wilson would be that guy from Georgia. He's probably ranked ahead of Jonah in most big boards for most teams. Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State, he's got 5 position versatility, so he would be a guy that I like him best as a guard, but people have said he's probably gonna play center for a team if they need him to. Marcus Embo from Purdue, he took reps at center at the Senior Bowl. I still like him at guard. But I guess the guy that I would say that is similar to that is waiting, that you can get maybe, I don't want to say late, again, that 3rd round range, it would be Jared Wilson out of Georgia. I think he's the guy. He tested really well. He ran a 4.84 40, a 1.72 10-yard split. Relatively explosive for a guy his size. I mean, a 32-inch vertical. And we're talking about a guy that, is 6'3", 310. He's got longer arms at 30, almost 33 inches. So, like, I would, if I'm a Bills fan and you end up with Cedric Van Pran-Granger from last year, and then you get Jared Wilson, his former teammate, I think that's a good combination because one maybe could play guard for you in a pinch, but then you have 2 reliable centers behind the guy that, like you said, is probably going to get priced out and maxed out on some type of contract from another team.
It's a tough thing. This offseason was spent by Bills fans pining for some really pie-in-the-sky things that now, once we see the numbers, it's hilarious that we ever dared to dream, right? Yeah. There was the days of the Myles Garrett trade where everyone goes, oh, man, Beane's got to try to get this done. And then you see the price tag and go, holy shit, you did what, Cleveland?
Yeah.
And you say, oh, that's insanity. No one should ever do that.
Right.
And then you turn around and you see the Jamar Chase contract. And you're like, oh, my God. And then T. Higgins gets paid and you go, all right, that's a weird cap thing that they did where they stretched a bunch of money out and made it look good, but it's really just a glorified 1-year deal. Like, but again, gobs of money being thrown at players where you were like, oh, well, the Bills should definitely trade for that guy. And then when you see the price tag, you make the face of the guy on Succession when he realizes he sent the dick pic to his dad and he's crouching down like, ooh, I'm really sorry I tweeted so aggressively about how Brandon Beane should be doing that. Don't look at me.
Yeah, right.
Because you feel stupid. And realistically, that's what your life becomes when you have an MVP quarterback who's being paid where Josh Allen is being paid. And when you have bookend tackles who are both on contracts. Everyone keeps talking about, oh, they need to get Josh more weapons. They have. They've paid a center and they've paid 2 great tackles. And that is why you're able to get by with bit players at wide receiver and you still have an explosive.
Yeah, they drafted a tight end in the first round. I mean,
it's not like they haven't tried, but they're doing the smart thing, which is building up that trench so that Josh doesn't have to do a redo of like I was joking last year. The last time the Bills made the AFC Championship game, their offensive line was putrid by comparison to what they had last year. Ultimately, similar result, but we lost that first AFC Championship game. It wasn't even close. We were never in the game, and it's because they bullied what was a terrible offensive line for Buffalo. I mean, the Chiefs just pantsed us in front of everybody. It was terrible. Yeah. We've come a long way from that, and we've done it by building up the trenches. And so in that way, I feel like there is a pipeline where maybe drafting some of these guys this year does make sense if they're trying to maintain a high level of play in front of Josh, knowing that they can't just keep writing checks to every guy who's on the line. Osiris Torrance is a player whom they might want to extend. Well, then you're probably not paying a center and a guard next to him if you're paying the other 3 guys. So somewhere in here on draft day, there's going to be a pick made, I think. I'm pretty sure. But it might be late in the draft. It's just interesting to think about the fact that you do have, to your point, a Cedric Van Pran-Granger already in-house, who you may not have to ever rely on to be your starter. Like if he pans out, that's great. If not, you can take another developmental offensive lineman later in the draft, pair the 2 of them together, and at least cobble something together out of the 2 of them. And it's almost like they're going to play rock, paper, scissors, and loser gets to play guard. Or swing tackle if Alec Anderson really does just.
And maybe that's what they're waiting on, right? Like Alec Anderson, maybe they're just like, hey, we're going to ride this as long as we can with the guys that we have. And then when gets priced out, we've got this guy waiting in the wings and we can get him on a much cheaper deal. We can give him some type of friendly extension for not only him, but for us. And maybe it's one of those things that works out. But if they went like as we've talked about, going maybe a swing tackle guard type of player, I think that guy would be maybe Emory Jones from LSU. I don't know if anybody's watched him, but I'm a big fan of him. He earned a top 100 grade for me, but I know there's some people out there that think he could be, potentially like a late 3rd or 4th round pick, which is perfectly fine. That kind of fits into that top 100 range that I was thinking, but he's massive, man. He's 6'6", 322, 325, somewhere in there. And he's got a thick frame, great play strength. He's got the length. He down blocks. He can chip and climb to the second level. I think he stays relatively square. So I like Emory Jones for a lot of reasons. And I think a team like the Bills, if they're looking for kind of that potential replacement at maybe right guard or getting another potential tackle because he played right tackle for LSU, that could be a guy that makes a lot of sense.
There's a couple players I want to ask you about. One of them might be the most interesting and polarizing offensive lineman in this entire class. There's something fascinating to me about players who, when you look at their size, you look at their measurables and everything else, it doesn't seem to align with the production. And it doesn't seem to align with what they accomplished at the NCAA level. And it makes him incredibly difficult to project into the NFL. You go, you can't be this height and you can't be this weight and also make an impact. And it's like, all right, but that guy was probably being told that for a really long time. And he heard it in high school. And then he heard it again when he joined a team in college. And then he gets to the pros and you go, can that continue? Like, what's the ceiling on that? I'd like to think that the NFL is such that at a certain point, being athletically gifted isn't enough. It takes that blend of not only being gifted, but also having the right technique. And if you're a supreme technician in some ways, that might also give you a leg up to survive in a league that's, again, it's full of monsters, right?
Right.
But you can survive in that world not being the typical like archetypal size for an NFL football team if you have enough technique and you have enough things that go right for you around just what your makeup is. Willie Lampkin out of North Carolina is just this. I find it fascinating because he's a guy who, if we were to stand back to back, I think I might be just a shade taller than him, which is crazy to think about. You're going to play in the NFL.
Yeah.
That's psychotic. And yet we're having that conversation. What do you think about when you look at Willie Lampkin?
Well, he's only 60 pounds heavier than my 14, soon to be 15-year-old son. He is 2 inches or 3 inches shorter than him. But I mean, like, yeah, he has 32-inch arms. He's light in the pants. He can play. He understands leverage. He's a guy that probably is best suited as a polar potential H-back in the NFL. If we're going to be honest, he's probably more of like that. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like a guy that's
insulting.
I know, but I don't see how he plays guard, tackle, center consistently in the NFL. Like, imagine Vita Vea being lined up across from him. It's not going to go well.
And
like, it doesn't go.
And that's my point.
Go well for guys that are 300 pounds.
There's a whole group of Willie Lampkin truthers out there who are like, no, man, but his technique is so polished. And I go, guys, I did an exercise with, and this is probably going to come off as insulting to some people listening to this. I apologize in advance. My buddy's sister used to go to these self-defense classes, these women's self-defense classes. And she used to come back and we'd be sitting around drinking beers and just shooting shit. And she would come back and we'd heckle her a little bit, be like, oh, what'd you learn at karate tonight? And she was like, oh, well, this is what they're teaching us how to disarm a person. I was like, well, first of all, don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. And so then the one night we're drinking and we're talking about it. And I was like, okay, why don't you show me something you know? And she's like, all right. So if you came at me with your hands like this, I'm supposed to grab your wrist and get control of it and put it behind your back. And I'm like, okay, you've been taught this technique. You've been drilling it for 5 weeks now. Take my wrist and put it behind my back. And brother, it did not go well. And
for you.
For her. And I kept telling her, I go, I'm not trying to embarrass you. What I'm trying to get you to understand is this is it. Whoever's teaching this class is a crackpot. Because no matter how skilled you are, no matter how fast your hands are, no matter how technical you're being, I outweigh you by 70 pounds. There is no forcing my arm anywhere I don't want it to go. Like physics is not on your side here. You're not going to win that. The same way Willie Lampkin is not going to go and play guard against Vita Vea and win more often than lose.
That could be a thing that happens this year because we do play Tampa Bay. So I would welcome a 5th round selection of Willie Lampkin, and then he's in due to injury against Vita Vea in week 6 against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and I mean, he would be a guy that like screams Sean McDermott, right? He's a former wrestler, a state championship wrestler. I think he was undefeated for 2 years. So like he makes a lot of sense for what they look for in offensive linemen, but it's just it's the overall size. Like he doesn't have the frame, I think, to withstand consistently in the NFL. But again, you bring him on, maybe you develop him into something, and maybe that's your Quentin Morris replacement down the road as your blocking tight end or 6th offensive lineman. If you know, in 2 years you get him up to 5'10" and 285, 290. I mean, you never know what it's going to turn out to be. And he is a technician. I mean, there is no doubt about it. I've seen a little bit, so I completely understand it. But when I saw that he was 270 and just everything, I was like, I can't go any further on this evaluation because one, I don't have the time, and I truly don't know if it's going to last in the NFL. He might be a great pro for the Toronto Argonauts in this Canadian Football League, but I don't know if it's going to last in the NFL. I hate bashing the guy. I don't know, boys.
Yeah, it is hard, right? And that's where when you see a guy who, like, if you're trying to talk strengths and weaknesses and you go, wrestling background, everyone goes, shit, here we go. It's a Sean McDermott special. He's salivating over this guy. And I think about, like, Gable Stevenson coming in last year. And they had the audacity. Like, to me, that was offensive. I'm not going to lie to you. To take a guy simply because he's a wrestler and you plug him into NFL trench play and go, well, we're going to invite him to camp anyway. Mm-hmm. I said, think about all of the guys who had good collegiate careers who didn't get an invite to a camp, who are sitting at home watching Sean McDermott parade a wrestler around. A guy with no technical skill in the trenches whatsoever, other than, well, he's got body control. I can tell you it's worth fuck all. If you as a defensive lineman, like Gable Stevenson going up against like I'm trying to think of even our backup right tackles, Ryan Vandermark. It's not fair. It's not fair. And Osiris Torrance, like you don't win those. Why? Because you're so technically lost. Even if you have the size and the strength and you have all the body contortion, body control, and you understand pad level, I guarantee you don't. And also those guys are going to turn you inside out almost at the drop of a hat. And so I had a diatribe about how I thought it was offensive that they brought him in and left those guys out on the street just looking for work. I would be pissed if I was a street free agent. And then the Bills called me after they cut that guy in 2 weeks, realizing that he can't hack it. And off, you take the spot because you just want to be in a camp.
Good thing you lost the wrestling championship.
Yeah,
like last week.
You do it begrudgingly though, because you'd be like, I can't believe they let that guy on there, and they didn't take me then. So I see that, and I say to myself, this guy's got versatility across the thing. He's got this wrestling background, and everyone goes, "Oh well, you know, he can move well." It's like, yeah, does he though? I don't think he's fast.
No,
I'd feel like for being that light, he would be faster.
Right, 100%, and he's not like. There's times where it's quick and he gets out of the gates, but then there's times where it's like, where you at, man? Like we got a gallop technique, we got a double team here, you got to go. And he's limited, man. But he's a guy that somebody's going to draft because there is things to work with, and there's hope that you can do something with him. And if you trust your staff. Again, maybe that team is the Bills, maybe it's the Lions, maybe it's the Rams or somebody else. But he's interesting. He really is interesting. He had a decent week down at the Senior Bowl, so we'll see how it goes for him for sure.
Your favorite player in this draft class for the offensive line?
Well, it wouldn't be fair for me to go Will Campbell because I think to me, I think he's an offensive tackle. I don't care about the arm length thing. And can I just say something to the people out there? This is an offensive lineman episode. Who in the hell thought like, oh, we're going to start measuring wingspan for offensive tackles and offensive linemen? This is the first year I've ever heard it. I've been doing this since 2010, and I've been watching the draft like I'm going to church on Sunday since like 1997. I've never heard anybody talk about wingspan for an offensive lineman ever in my life until this year, because we have a very talented guy that's got shorter arms. And they don't want him to be an offensive tackle, because it doesn't fit their narrative, because they want him to be a guard. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Well, here's what I love about that. Wingspan? I have a wingspan that literally, like, I've done the thing at training camp where they have a picture of Greg Rousseau, like the life-size thing.
Yeah.
Mine's not that far off, and I'm only 5'11 and a half. Like, it's hilarious when you see, like, and there again, my nickname growing up was McGilla. They used to make fun of me. They'd be like, "Oh, make sure you wash your hands before you come to the table because they've been hands been dragging on the ground all day." It's like, you guys, if my cousins were mean, right? Like I come from a long line of mean people.
Yeah.
But I watched that Will Campbell. I think it was at the combine when he was talking about, oh yeah, he goes, the people worried about my arm length aren't coaches. They never coached, and there's a reason that they don't coach. And I loved that.
Yeah, and he's 6'6", 319 pounds. Like, we're neglecting that. He's been playing since a true freshman at LSU in the SEC. He's given up 4 sacks in his career through 2,500 plus pass blocking snaps. Like, this dude is technically sound. He's got lateral quickness, his feet, and like, that's the other thing. They're all talking about his hands. But what about his feet? Like, they work together.
Yes.
So if the hands aren't working but the feet are, I think he's going to be okay, because again, he's 6'6", 319 pounds. So he would be the guy that I would say, but that's, I think, cheating, because I think he's a top 5 player in this draft.
Well, can I point out, it is hilarious about NFL draft culture And this is the thing, after doing so many years of this, like watching from afar and bringing smart people like you and guys in to come talk to us about the things you learn while you're going through this analysis thing.
Yeah.
I love how the draft community unto itself loves to do this thing where they take a guy and he's got everything right, but he's got one small flaw and they try to drag him down because of it. And at the same time, that same community of people will take a guy like a Willie Lampkin and go, no, you don't understand. Don't pay attention to all of these obvious flaws because he's got X, Y, and Z that might pan out.
Right. Yeah. It's such a crazy business and place to be with so many different minds and opinions. And then there are some that just make some really asinine claims and pro comparisons and things. And I'm like, what in the world are we doing? And I only coach at the high school level, but it's just one of those things where it's like, what in the hell are we doing, man? Like, are you watching this stuff? But getting away from Will Campbell, I will say, deeper in the draft, and it's not really that deep because I think he's a second round caliber player, but he's an experienced one, and he's started 39 games in his career, 38 at left tackle, 1 at right tackle. That's Aireontae Ersery out of Minnesota. I really like him as a starting tackle in the NFL. 6'6", 331, which is massive. He ran a 5.01 second 40 at the combine. A lot to like within his game. I don't want to say he's Tristan Wirfs because I don't think he's as clean as Tristan Wirfs coming out. But when you look at just the size and the frame and the way he moves, it's kind of similar in a sense. I love the way he operates in zone. He can use that drag hand and stay attached when he's going laterally. He can get up to the second level. He does everything that he's supposed to do in zone. He's looking and then he continues to climb. I like the arm length there with him. There's no concerns there. Relatively clean in his pass pro sets. I think just really hand placement and timing are probably the two biggest things that need cleanup, but you're getting an experienced guy, former track kid, good overall athlete. And I think he's going to be a better pro than he was a college player. And I think that's simply because he's going to go to a better system. He's going to get away from Minnesota and the overrated PJ Fleck. And he's going to go to a place where he can start potentially at right tackle or left tackle.
It is hilarious to hear you say that a guy that big, oh, he's a former track kid.
Yeah.
What the fuck? What? That's terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, he was a thrower more so than anything. But
okay. I was going to say, good God.
I believe, if I remember right, he did do some relay stuff. I believe they do some big man relays.
I was going to say, did they move him a lane away from everybody else just in case? I mean, there's no way that guy fit in a single lane.
I don't know. I mean, I couldn't pull up any of his numbers, but it wouldn't surprise me though, because again, he tested really well. I mean, he's got some really good numbers. When you look at mockdraftable.com, he's in the 90th percentile for a lot of athletic scores. So he's a pretty good athlete.
So first of all, I very much appreciate you joining us, lending your expertise, everything else. Before we let you go, first of all, tell everybody where they can follow you on social media and find the rest of your work throughout the course of this month. That is the final leg of a relay race leading up to the NFL draft.
Yeah, at Russ NFL Draft on X or Twitter, whatever we're all calling it nowadays. But find me there. That's where I spend way too much of my time, but that's where all the social media stuff is for me. I don't have anything else. And then you can go to fantasypros.com, bettingpros.com, or thelionswire.com, and you'll come across my stuff pretty regularly for the next month on that. So, yeah.
And I want to get your reaction to a story.
Okay.
So Chris here used to live in a upper-lower on the edge of West Seneca, South Buffalo. And I know where this is going. There was an apartment of girls who lived up above him. And one of them started dating this guy. His name was Victor Sulaco. And Victor Sulaco
sounds dangerous.
So Victor Sulaco drove a giant SUV with Alabama plates on it. And it was one of those things of he's a gigantic human being. He's clearly not from Buffalo. That's interesting.
Here's the thing is I noticed him showing up without seeing him.
You couldn't not, but there was no way to not notice.
You see the vehicle and then you see Alabama plates and you go, this person doesn't choose to be in Buffalo on their own accord. So, and then I eventually saw him, and he was the size of a door frame.
And so then it turns out this guy was brought to camp by the Buffalo Bills. Oh. And he was like shooting for a practice squad spot, kind of a UDFA kind of a deal.
He played at Oklahoma State for Mike Gundy in the mullet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Chris kind of, coming and going. Hey, what's going on? Hey, I kind of breaks the ice with like hey, I know Reed Ferguson. He used to live here. He used to live downstairs, the guy that you see at practice every day. So then I'm like, Chris, can you go talk to Victor Sulaco and see if we can set up some drills in the front yard? Just a few. I want to see if I can beat him around the edge. Just like, and he was just.
Did you guys end up doing it?
He very nicely was like, nah, man, I don't want to hurt him. Nah, I don't want to hurt nobody. I don't want nobody to get hurt out here. And I was like, no, come on. I was like, Chris, tell him. You don't have to go easy on him. He's like, no. I don't know how he goes. And it was funny, the idea of not knowing how to go half speed.
Yeah.
So you've watched as much as you have, right? Could the average person off the street in a phone booth with even like a mid-tier,
I know exactly what you're going to ask,
NCAA athlete who's played tackle,
yep, is
there a world where if we had gotten out there and let's say we do 20 reps, how many do you think it's possible I win one of them? 0.
Dude, we've had this question in the summertime when we go up north, us buddies, we're all drinking on the lake, whatever. A couple of my buddies were D1 hockey players at Ferris State and stuff like that here in the state of Michigan. And they're like, dude, I could get by an offensive lineman, no problem. Defensive lineman, no problem. I'm like, you guys have no idea how big and fast and strong these guys are. They will grab you and it's over. Like, you think you're going to get upfield and turn the corner. It's not going to happen. Like, you're going to try to dip that shoulder and they're going to give you one extension and lock out and just toss you. And that's how I knew that I was never going to play beyond high school, because I went to Michigan. I stood next to Jake Long. I think I've probably shared this story on this show, but I stood next to Jake Long and I was like, it's over, man.
No, yeah, I can't do this.
Sports broadcasting is where I'm going. This is it. I'm done, dude.
He scared you right to the booth.
Yeah. I was like, it's over. It was, and then you go to the Senior Bowl and I remember when I met Charles Amenu. He was a guy I really pushed for out of Texas, and he's a good dude and everything as far as at that time. I know he's had some off-the-field stuff since then, but he came down the elevator, off the elevator, or walking down some steps, and I'm just like,
you just look up in awe like a kid. You're like, wait a minute.
I was like, who? He's 6'5", 285 pounds. I've always joked about this. I got White Castle sliders for hands. These things are small.
Chris, hand size.
Yeah, dude. His whole hand was the size of my head, just going and he engulfed everything. And I was like, this guy is massive. And you just see it every year. And you're like, I would never have a shot. So anybody that's like, I could go 20 reps and get one. No, you couldn't. There's no shot. There's no shot.
I got it up here on my phone, Russ. Victor Salco, UDFA from 2017. I have his RAS score. 34.5-inch arms, 9.5 hand, 316, 6'5". He didn't go to the combine, so his pro day, 40-yard dash, 5.47, 3.2 20-yard split, 1.95 10-yard split.
Yeah, but what was his bench?
His bench was 24 at pro day, so I don't know what that means.
There's no chance that I would have gotten off the blocks.
Drew, he would have killed you. He would have killed you. You would have never had season tickets. It would have been game over, dude.
I would have been paralyzed. Hey, yeah. I would have had tickets. It just would have been in the section where I roll up to him. That's it.
And then when it snows, you're screwed. You got to stay home. There's no shot.
It was the funniest thing of him just being like, no, we're not going to do that. It almost took me back to the time Reed when we were like, oh, let's go do a snapping drill. Like Chris and I will tape it and we'll go see who can catch it.
I've taken a snap from Reed Ferguson out in the front yard. I did offer Sulaco $20 to pancake Drew in the front yard. He said no.
He goes, if I give you $20, will you just go out there and just pancake him out of nowhere? It's like an RKO out of nowhere. Can you just get Drew?
He would flatline. It would bulldoze. You'd be over.
It'd be over. But it's the thought that counts, and it's that thing, right? It's all your buddies out on the lake who are like, after 5 beers, I could do this.
Yeah.
It's the hubris of man that makes this so much fun. You get to see it up close with all the research you do, and I love that you do it. I love that you come and join us and just talk a little bit of shop. I appreciate you giving us our time. Guys, this has been fun, but we got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. That's Russ Brown. This has been your Rock Pile Report.